All right, so I had a small technical difficulty, but we're back. No, so I think like the old regime, and I may repeat kind of what I said a little bit, but the old regime, I think we're inheriting a lot of their still beliefs. They're holding on to power. They're maybe not meant to be racist, but like that's just how things were back then, and they're still just used to that. So we're inheriting that from the powers that be. Now, on the flip side of that, I think, and this is not a popular opinion, I think victims are inheriting that too. And even when they're not victims, they're inheriting a certain, there are victims, yes, but there are certain people who like aren't, their family have gotten out of it. Their family are, in a different place, and they're still using that as a card to justify their lack of what they feel like they deserve or their success or whatever. Not saying what everybody deserves is like a whole equality, but I'm saying like, oh, I should have this because they have this. Like, well, no, they got that for whatever reason. Their grandpa works harder than your grandpa or whatever. That's why they have certain things that you don't. And I think with new politicians, it'll help erase a lot of that. Like I think I was saying AOC, I'm not a massive fan of. And I like some of her stuff. I like that she's young. I like that she's like, she's bullheaded. She's getting out there, stubborn as hell. Like at least what she believes in, she's fighting all these old folks, super old folks to get it, to make the change. So I respect the hell out of that. Do I agree with everything? No. Do I agree with some of her stuff? Yeah. But I wish we had more people like that, and like kind of like the 90-year-old freaking politicians we got out there would just pass the baton to us younger folks that want to do it and go out there. Not everybody wants to be a politician, but I think it would be a lot of change if it did, because I do think unless taught, unless trained in racist academy, you're not going to be as racist or as judgmental or as discriminatory as the generation before you.
I would hope so, right? But part of it is access. If you're not around it, then if you are isolated, I feel like it's harder to empathize. But it also goes back to how do you empathize? How do you, going back to your word branding, the idea around certain or any different culture, right? Black, white, from another country, whatever that is, there are those identifying kind of traits that become pervasive about a group of people. So, the old idea was that Black people were inherently lazy, right? Like that was a trope, an idea that's like, oh yeah, they're just not as hard workers. But that's,
I think, it's insane, because
branding.
slavery is pretty hard-working shit. You know what I mean? Like that's
like, yeah, the country was built on the
hella hard. Yeah, because if we would have a much shittier country if Black folks were truly lazy.
But the pervasive, yeah, again, I agree with you, but the pervasive thought for a long time had been, oh, Jim Crow South, Black people are lazy, they don't work hard. And that has been kind of the narrative throughout. And those kind of identifying factors, like Black people being dangerous, right? The fear of, what was it? George Zimmerman, right? The fear that he had going down the street.
That's the Skittles. Is that the guy with the Skittles? Killed the kid with Skittles or something like that? Okay, yeah. That was a shame. That was horrible.
He has fear because of his idea of how Black people are. He should be afraid of Black people, when in reality, Black people should be the ones that are afraid of being arrested, killed. I mean, you go back to, our country doesn't like to look at those things about, I feel like a lot of people found out about the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre because of Watchmen. Right? Watchmen came out and they had a beautiful opening. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to see sci-fi stuff. And you see this kind of really beautifully shot massacre of a Black community. And you're like, oh, that can't be real. And I know a lot of people went online and looked it up and was like, oh my God, this happened.
Yeah, I did the same. I was like, I had no clue that was a thing.
No, most people don't, because again, we don't, you said it was emotional. And I think you're right about our country. I would never have defined Americans as overly emotional, but when you frame it in how we deal with conflict or how we deal with differences, I think you might be onto something that is a revelation for me, that we as a people, as a culture, are really emotional about personal things. And so, again, talking about the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre, they say this happened, in the 20s, 1921. That's not too many generations removed from people now. Like those people's grandkids our kids are running the country now. So like you look at just how short America's history has been, because it's not long. We're not China, right? We haven't been existing for thousands of years. Our democratic experiment, has gone on, and we're sustaining and maintaining. But how much of that can we keep the same? And this idea of the old guard leaving behind, my question is, what are we replacing it with, right? And again, to go back to the top of this conversation, this idea of community or collective representation and sustainability, that we are, instead of being divisive, instead of it being, I disagree with you, fuck off, I can't deal with you, it being, well, okay, you may not see the value of Biden in this. And, I can agree with you on some points, right? There's definitely things, but, where do we come down on what we want our future to look like, right? And I would think from conversations that we've had outside of this conversation, there are things that we both want our country to look like for our kids, for our grandkids, for the future. And so that's what we have to affirm. And so instead of, my prescription would be, instead of us being so divisive and polarized, let's be willing to have a conversation. And look, you may or may not change my mind, but I don't think less of you because you have a different opinion than I do. Now, some of those things are hard though. Some are deal breakers. Like, think back to when you first started dating, right? There were like deal breakers for certain girls that were like, well, if she did that thing, we can't. This relationship won't go so far. So it's an interesting balance of like, how do you have standards, right, for what you believe in and the values that you believe, without kind of creating your own perfect echo chamber? Because that's what social media has become, right? You cultivate it so much that you have your own echo chamber. But we started doing that with our personal friends in our lives too. That doesn't lead to, it doesn't lead to me being able to hear feedback. And again, we work weird jobs. We put our work out there. We get feedback. So we're used to feedback. But most people aren't used to feedback, especially about how the personal choices that they make. You get defensive if I say, oh, Mike, you need to work out more. Like, oh, mind your business. Like, what my routine, like, you know what I mean?
I am working out. Hold on. What do you mean? I've lost 10 pounds. What do you mean? Yeah.
Oh, I'm going the opposite direction, man. COVID-15, man. Oh,
I gained a COVID 25. Like, I went hard. But, I think a major divisive thing in a lot of people, it's almost like, and I'll probably go deeper into this in other episodes and whatnot with, but I think identity politics is destroying us as a country. Because it's how can I minoritize myself? So if I'm the least minoritizable person, basically, according to media, I'm a straight, white, masculine, cisgendered male. If you don't know some of those things, Google them. It's annoying. There's new titles made up every day. But that's pretty much my generic setup here in California, right? All those things, I'm supposedly the epitome of all evil, and my opinions don't matter or anything because of those said things. Now, that's a card that people will play to then, if I bring up a point in history, facts, whatever it may be, and look, it's not emotional. This is what happened. 2 + 2 is 4, and 4 doesn't give a shit how you feel about it. It is what it is. They'll go, oh, well, you're a straight white male, you don't get it. Or privilege or whatever, when it's that kind of divisive, dumb shit, just to kill. It doesn't have to do with anything about is it even white privilege or whatever, if you believe in that, okay? It has to do with just those excuses don't matter to the fact that there were conquerors in all countries that took over other countries and this and that. Every country's had slavery. Everybody's had this. Not justifying our time in slavery, but it's if you bring back and say that white people created this shit, they didn't, and try to make white people the evil, how you expect to have white allies? And then now the majority that you've made the majority, not you as in Daren, but the person arguing against this is if you're trying to help the minority by killing the majority who you want as allies and shame and guilt, and it's not going to do it. You need to talk to person, talk about beliefs, not going, oh, Daren wears glasses. He's a glasser. He's a glass eye. I'm not listening to what he said. He saw the color red. Who knows what he saw? He said it was a bird. It was probably a dog. He wears glasses. He doesn't know shit. Like, no, that's dumb. It's so dumb. And it annoys the hell out of me.
But that hierarchy, I wonder, is that ingrained in us? Because I read fantasy novels, big fantasy, I love them. And in the book I'm reading right now, there's a joke that in this society, they base class off of eye color. So if you're light eyes, you're of higher class. If you have dark eyes, you're of lower class. You know?
All right, I'm in the high class. Yes.
You're in there. You're in there. I'm
again. Privilege, rawr.
But like, it makes a joke about just how arbitrary our systems are for denotating the upper class. But no matter what, there becomes this stratification of, well, these are the elites and these are the not elites, and we treat them differently. And I wouldn't say white people didn't invent slavery, but America perfected chattel slavery. Like, right, we, you know, being the industrious nation that we are, we took something that was a system, and I think we enhanced it in a great way, not great way, don't mean great at all, but we enhanced
speaking
it
non-emotionally to the quality of said productive system. I get what you're saying. If we're just speaking input in numbers, not emotion, not ethics or morals, just, you know, input versus output. I get it. I get you. You're not a horrible person, Daren. You know.
Thank you. It's recorded now.
It is there.
But like, they perfected it, and so our country and our system was built around this idea of separation, right? Not of inclusion. As much as we talk about the Constitution, you know, for the people, by the people, it was a subset of people. It wasn't for everybody, right?
I think when they thought of it, it was like the people look like this, and they weren't expecting for the Irish to come, the Polish, the Italian, much less Black, Asian, Hispanic, all that. Like, a lot of people don't realize Italians are treated like dog shit, Polish treated like dog shit, you know, unless you were an English white settler, you had it good. Everybody else had to like fight and earn different degrees.
Even property owner though, like, right? It was even like, if you own property when this country was founded, our government was for you, right?
If it wasn't for the mob, Italians would be still dog shit. Like, that's, you'd be hearing wops and dagos and like throw all that junk. That was the only thing that changed us over, because we were considered the dirty white, like dirty blood, dirty this. Even if we were white, there was a class system amongst that, and we were still, you know, the N-word was even thrown out to Italians. That was like the crazy thing, was like, oh, you're just different, so bang. And to my point with all that, I think humans, and I wonder if aliens, I do believe in aliens, I wonder if they do this shit too. But humans, I think no matter what it is, we're going to find some way to, as a majority, not everybody, just I'm speaking in generalities, that we're going to find a way to rank each other, hate each other, you know, whatnot, whether it's religion, whether it's money, like, you know, social status, whether it could be eye color. I mean, you could be the same skin, same tribe, same, like, what am I thinking? In the 90s, in Africa, what are the name of the two tribes? The Tutsi, the Tulsi, and the Houthi. It's two tribes. Google it, it should pop up right away. There was a huge I think that's it. I know I'm butchering those two tribes, but they look identical to me, right? They look all like it's two that you couldn't tell that, like, just by looking at somebody, oh, you're from this tribe, you're from that tribe. Yeah. And there's the minority of them actually had the power. So there was a beautiful Netflix documentary about it. And he's like, this one guy's got like, he's like a war criminal. And he was part of the minority, you know, powerful minority, and his tribe, which I believe was the Tutsi, the T1, and the T1 had, like, they paid and put out machetes and all kinds of crazy stuff to kill the Houthi, or once again, butchering that, but the other tribe. And they're both Africans. They're both Black folks. They're both whatever, but they found it like, your tribe is the shittier tribe. You're different for whatever reason they found, and like, fuck you, and we're going to kill you, and we're going to massacre, you know, tons and tons of you guys. And that's what happened. White people weren't involved. Asians weren't involved. Like, nobody else was involved. They found it amongst themselves to be like, I hate you, and here's a reason I just made up. And that's going to happen.
Like, right. And I hear you, and I'm trying to like go through my mind of like, is that just human nature that we can't,
I don't know.
We can't really come together because we must find some difference, because, you know, you're bigger, you're taller, you have this color, like, right. We can go down the list.
Ego. I think it's like a nature of ego or something like that, where people, I don't know if we were taught that. I don't know. Cause I remember being 5 years old living in Las Vegas, and I had some neighbors down the way. My first like super best friend was named Tyrone. Okay. And Tyrone looked different than me. Tyrone was cool. Tyrone was just Tyrone. He had a cool house with different stuff, and their parents had a car that had like it was a car, but also was a truck bed. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And then come to find out years later, I'm told he was black. I'm like, what? I didn't know black or white or any of that shit till I was taught it later. I see color now. Like, I'm not stupid. And I hate anybody that says that. Like, if you can see some shit, you see it. But like, as a kid, I didn't know Tyrone was different than me.
What that implication meant.
Yeah, someone had to teach me a difference. Like, I learned, but my mom taught that, everybody was the same, judge them on their character, not because, I'd be like, you're an asshole. Oh, I'm an asshole because I'm black? No. Or because I'm Asian? No, it's because you're an asshole. That's it. I might happen to describe the asshole characteristics later. Like, you are an asshole that looks like blank, blank, and blank. You could be a bald asshole. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, but I never knew about those things until they were taught to me. So to your point, could this hierarchy better than me? I deserve this. You deserve that. You're lesser. Do humans make themselves feel better by having people under them? Because you can't have a top without the bottom.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, that's real. That's like, it's sad that I can't really refute that I can't really come back and be like, no, we're not like that as a people. But like, because you look at and you see all of the differences, right? And we even in politics now, we're so focused on what divides us, and that's what Biden's running on. And I think that's what any politician would run on now. How do we bring the country together? And it's a contrite idea, right? Let's bring the country together. But in practice, what's going to have to be kind of like, your perspective is nice because you are not starting from a place of judgment. You're starting from a place of openness. But I don't know how pervasive it is or how comfortable we are with people that are different from us, right? As Black people, we have to be comfortable because we are the minority, right? We see that people are different from us. So we have to understand how to integrate, move through, code switch, right? In dealing with people that are different from us. That's ingrained. But how do you see someone that's different from you and not treat them as someone who is crazy, evil, bad, wrong, different? That level of tolerance. And I think, look, going back to the riots, people riot because they feel like there's no other vehicle, no other option. My voice is not being heard. So I have to protest so that my point of view, my perspective can be heard. That tolerance comes with a level of education. And for whatever reason, it always comes back to that. How do we educate people from an early age? Like you were talking, at a young age, you didn't know that. You got taught that when you got older. Somebody had to teach you the difference. Now, some people get taught that difference and are taught, well, that guy is probably, his family is probably X, Y, and Z. They're poor, they're this, they're that. Those misconceptions. So it's about education. So I'll ask you this now. How are you educating yourself right now? Like, right, what are you reading? What are you watching? How are you staying connected and informed so that you don't close off and become a internet troll hermit?
Oh man, but the troll life looks like so much fun. So easy. I just talk shit.
So comfortable.
No, so comfortable. No, I think I've always loved other cultures and loving living. Like, for example, if I could get citizenship in another country, like bang, let's go, boom. Like, I want to go live somewhere where I haven't been. Like, my whole life has kind of been that experiment and educating myself because I was bored living in the South. I knew I wanted better. I knew I wanted more. I wanted to understand. I had tours I was on for performing and this and that. And they're like, hey, do you want to do a Southern tour? Do you want to go international? I'm like, I was raised in the South. I want to go international. Let's do it. Yeah. I want to learn about the French, the Polish, the Swedish, the English, Irish, Northern Ireland, and in the Republic of Ireland. I wanted to learn Korea, Japan, Russia, all over. And even now, like, I don't travel as much. I have a kid. I have whatnot. I live in California. Shit's expensive, but I go on Netflix. Whatnot there. Like, for example, one show that stood out to me that I know a lot of people were shitting on, but I loved was Blackish.
Never watched it. I've seen the pilot of it, but I never watched it.
Grownish and all that. I think it's the creator. What's his name? It's gonna kill me.
Kenya Barris.
Yes. So basically, he kind of goes through. And there's comedic value in this and that, but he's basically like, in it, like a black man, obviously, doing well, doing amazing in this industry. Very, he's wealthy, he's doing great, and he's dealing with the issues of like how black people treat him and how white people treat him, and he dislikes both sides of things and whatnot. Like if he does this, he loses blackness. If he does this, white people don't accept him or get mad, or they're just like tiptoeing around him because he's black or whatever, And it seems like he can't, because he thinks different. He can't like feel comfortable with either side, because white people are trying to be as comfortable and like going it over. Like I see it as a circle. They're trying so hard not to be racist that, oh, ding, you're racist now. And that's, I think what's happening a lot with the left right now is trying so hard not to be racist, but like you've passed that goal line, you've gone around the planet and you're back to racist again. Like you're doing some crazy shit. But he then also like talks about the black community and references that where like, it's like, he's not earning any points of black people either, like in certain aspects, certain avenues. Like
he can't win no matter what.
He can't win, and it's something I noticed growing up, that like I was, even with my black friends, even being the token white guy, I was on a different grading system with them. Like I was being graded different, and they were grading each other different.
I mean, that's
go ahead. Oh, I mean, I had it was different degrees. Like I had a buddy of mine who was very smart, who was very educated, who always wanted to read books, and he spoke different. He didn't speak Ebonics. Like Ebonics was actually tried to be pushed as a language in my high school. Like that was supposed to be like a language situation at one point that was trying to get worked in. And like I understand Ebonics, I speak it, I'm very good with slang, all that when I need to. In different circles, I blend in very well. But in that situation, they were dogging on my friend because he spoke with an amazing vocabulary. He wanted to go to Harvard. He wanted all this. And they were like, shut your white ass up. Da, da, da. I was like, wait, how come just because he wanted to get educated and speak, he was now white? He loses blackness, because he still was, I don't know if there's a better phrase for this, but he was into tons of black shit. Like, you know what I mean? Whatever that is, whoever wants to label that, which I think's silly in its own regard, but he was still very in the culture. And it's,
I mean, I experienced the same thing. It is an interesting thing about education and blackness, that there was a time in which education, being overeducated or being the bookworm, was looked at as it's certain groups, right? It's bully. Bully will choose anything that they can if you are different to pick on you, right? If you're not part of the norm. So anybody who's too smart or too nerdy, that's an identity thing, right? It hurts my ego that you're smarter than me, so I have to tear you down. You might be onto something though, man. I do think that it is.
A friend of mine, well, my sister's pretty much husband, he's black, and he called it, his name was Willie, he called it crabs in a bucket, where basically it's like he sees it as if somebody else climbs out and is about to get the top, it's like, oh no, how dare you do better than me? You're gonna blah blah blah. You're gonna just yada yada. You're gonna justify. You're gonna kill all my excuses and justify the fact that I might be lazy, or I might not be doing this, I might not be trying hard enough, for the world just is what it is, and I don't get everything I want. You're just because you're climbing out, I'm now a shittier person because you got out. So they try to pull back down.
I guess I don't know if I would describe that as like a uniquely black thing.
Oh no, definitely not. I was just saying what he describes it as right there. Because I mean, it's similar. From my experience and being in the Vietnamese culture and whatnot, growing up with that as well, there's a little bit of that, like a Vietnamese grade, especially if you've been here second generation, this and that, whatnot. It's like, how Vietnamese are you? Or, same thing, black, how black are you? When it's no other race to my knowledge. And I ask people these questions because I wonder if it's like universal across the board. Is there a grading system? Like, is there a level of blackness, a ranking system of Asian? And mostly it's a little bit in Asian countries and a ton in the American black community. I can't speak to Africa. I don't know.
It's across the board. You go to any country, right? Brazil, the lighter you are, the closer to white you are.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a pervasive kind of cultural thing of elevating those like you and denigrating those different from you. I mean, you spend time in Japan, but like in Japan, like the Chinese don't get along with the Japanese, don't get along with the like they all have their their beefs when culturally they're different, right? All
Yeah.
those cultures are very different,
Mhm.
but what makes one better than the other?
Yeah. I mean, that's a beef. If I go to Koreatown here in Los Angeles, I'll hear people talk shit on each other and be like, damn, da da da. And I'm like, oh, okay.
No,
Like,
it's I definitely think it's perfect. But colonization, right? Colonization, I
yeah.
think, has a big part in dealing with, because especially the European colonization created that hierarchy. The
Mm.
closer to white you are, the better. And for you talk about Black people in America specifically. I mean, the first delineation was, were you a house slave or were you a field slave, right? You
Mm.
create that delineation, and pitting the culture against each other. So there will be this infighting, that has historically been a part of it. And so until there is a healing, until there is a reckoning of dealing with that separation, and even vocalize, right? We could talk about like trauma. How do you get through trauma, right? What is that healing process of dealing with those traumas? And how do you come out on the other side of it? And I think that
I feel like it
one
happens
thing,
a lot in the Black community, though. Like, I feel like it's a ton of inherited trauma.
slavery. I mean, like, right, if you
I mean,
start
yeah.
a culture, like, right, I don't have too much connection to Africa.
Mhm.
My grandparents, my great grandparents, we're American, right? I am
Yeah.
an African American. I'm Black American.
Mhm.
So this idea, if my cultural identity started with a horrible, tragic thing, I'm
Mhm.
starting from that place. So
Yeah.
my history, my lineage, my family has to build and find healing methods through generations. And that healing process is different for people.
Mhm.
It's hard. It's challenging if you don't have a support system at all. Like the idea, even in the last, I would say 5 years, maybe 10 years, the idea of Black people going to therapy has become more pervasive, at least in the conversations I've had with
Mhm.
my friends, that, we don't have to be afraid of going to someone and talking about our
I
problems.
literally have heard a friend of mine go, "That's some white people shit." Like, just like that. You just don't like. And it's, of course, that's not every Black person. That's not that. This is just like what I've experienced, what I've seen, but I don't hold just because this was. I don't want to name anybody, but because you're listening. It's if so and so said this. I don't think every Black person believes that or thinks that or whatever. But I do notice a majority on media, on this, on that, is like it's not as much of a lift up as there is a tear down. And I don't know if that's a branding thing. I don't know if that's from slavery, like being, hey, you're lesser. So then there's some people that are like, I'm better. And other people are like, you're not better than me. So come back down here. And that's the crab in the bucket theory that,
I think that's part, you can look at historically how that was created from colonization and slavery, but then it gets exasperated with capitalism, right?
Yeah.
Capitalism is not about, I'm not making my fortune to help you, I'm making my fortune to help me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. It's not specifically a Black thing, but it gets exacerbated in a capitalist society that benefits those that can make money from what they do and climb to the top of that mountain.
I just, the only thing is, when it comes to that, you're right. I think everybody does. And I never thought quite. I think everybody very does it. I just think the branding, back to bringing up branding, because I think branding is a problem for a lot of stuff, is with Black folks. I think a lot of that aspect is in the public eye. And that is celebrated in music, that is celebrated in this, celebrated when everybody else is more secret. Like, for example, if I'm going to pair Italian heritage, friends, family, I got, is there's some connected folks. There's folks that are in the mob and shit, but nobody runs around and goes, hey, I'm in this shit, or I'm connected, or I'm this. The difference with, if you ask someone who's connected, they're like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a butcher. You know what I mean? Or nah, I dig ditches or some shit. They'll never admit that it's even a thing. But then with Black folks, and the same thing with Asian people, same thing with, Middle Eastern, all that, they'll deny. But then Black folks' music, I'm a gangster, I'm a this, I'm a that. Da, da, da. Now it's less now, but like, especially in the 80s, 90s, whatnot, in the early 2000s, like gangster rap, prime, kill, da, da, da. And I love rap, but it was very, I think that's part of the negative branding, because for someone who doesn't know Black people, right? Assume you're from some suburb that I know Black people, then you finally see one and they dress just like the people that you see on TV who are carrying guns and shooting shit in music videos and whatnot. Now it's ignorant. It's extremely ignorant. But you would then inherit
that association.
You're like, oh, he sags his pants. He's a gangster. He's got a Tech 9 on him. Oh shit, blah blah blah. And it's ignorant and dumb. But I think that might be the branding that's hurting a little bit. And it's
But
dumb to believe some shit and just say, oh, this is them because so-and-so is them. That's dumb.
what your
But
experience, like what you take in, what you see becomes
yeah,
influential. It's why
you know,
the civil rights movement became successful, because people could see what was happening. It's not like all of a sudden in the 60s and the 50s, there was more police brutality. No, there was a plan to bring cameras to these protests, to watch the dogs, watch the
yeah,
hose. So in the idea of
that's
branding,
social media now. It might not have even have changed that much. Now just people are capturing it and posting about it. And it's like, oh, it's not any worse. It's just now you have evidence more, you know?
you have evidence
I
more.
kind of
But
think that's what it is.
again, you see a shift in people. There is, like, again, this year I've had more conversations about race than I have in the last 10. But going back to branding, the question is who is doing the branding, right? How much can the Black community brand themselves versus how much are they branded for the audience? And that, you know, we're in the entertainment industry, right? So like you walk in with your script and you say, it's going to be about this. And they're like, no, to sell this, we have to make it about this. We have to strip down the masculinity, whatever this thing is. We have to make it about this. So they change it. So they brand it to package it. So much of the
Here's
Black.
a bunch of money. You're not going to, I don't want this. I don't want that script. I don't want my script like that. Well, here's an unbelievable amount of money. Okay. It can go that right. You know, I get it. Probably
Commodification. It's the commodification of Blackness, right? And across the board, you can go back to Jackie, like, right? You go back to baseball, Jackie Robinson, right? The Negro Leagues. The Negro Leagues were jumping, right? MLB sucked, right? Nobody was going to MLB games because the Negro Leagues were fun. Jackie Robinson goes to the MLB and almost single-handedly revives it. But what he does is he creates a pipeline that, right, you talk about branding. Negro Leagues are great. So other people start to follow. The Negro Leagues get depleted. Now they all play for the MLB because of that check. So capitalism is a poison. Capitalism can be a poisonous tool to the maintaining of a cultural identity, right? And then the branding happens outside of Blackness. Because again, like you said, how can Black people historically be considered lazy when the work that was done to build this country was built on the backs of slaves?
a lot of wealth was built on the back of slaves. A lot of
the branding of that, the word that you want to use, that's not the branding that we have. So something happened along the way. Jim Crow South, the media that we consume, the lack of.
Well, there was horrible movies. I remember, I remember seeing like old movies and stuff where like a Black person was the vampire, was the evil, was the, you know, they weren't actual vampire, but you know what I mean? They were like in that monster role, coming to take your children, coming to blah, blah, blah.
Birth of a Nation, the
which
first
is watered
film.
down now. Yeah, which is watered down now to like just normal people esque stuff. But yeah, who's paying to keep this image going? And then is anyone at fault? Like, for example, I could see the struggle, like, you know, you worked hard your whole life, you're trying to make it in music, you're trying to whatever. And someone says, you got a great voice, you rhyme really well on the beat, you flow, your flow is incredible. But hey, you know, we executives, whatever they look like or whatnot, go, hey, this would sell really nice.
I mean, we know what they look like. They don't look like the artists usually.
No.
Right?
No.
You look at
it's changed a little bit, but I think even like the, you know, I don't know, the big label owners now just imitate what they learned from, I'll admit it, pretty much white execs. Like it, you know.
But that's the thing. You look at any ownership, right? I read a book right out of college called $100 Million Slaves. And it was a dope book because it was exploring how in major sports, specifically basketball, how many millionaires there are in basketball and how much money they make. But at that time, there was one Black owner in the NBA, right? There are 0, I think, in the NFL. So like you look at the workforce versus who's making the money, and there's a huge disparity between those two things, right? Even though you're making a bunch of bank, are you in a position of ownership? And this is where I say things are different, right? There has been a shift. Now that it's not equitable, right? If you walk into most exec rooms, you walk into ownership, leadership, it's still mostly white. But there is.
Could that be population though? Because based on population, if you're going to throw all these white people in a white category, then you have what I think it's 60-something% off the top of my head. I think it's 60-something% white, 13-ish% Black. So you know what I mean. Then how many people say Black people of that 13% want to be a CEO, want to have that job?
if you want it to be representational, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not 13% Black executives in Hollywood.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay. So you're saying it doesn't even meet that population, like general population number. Okay.
It doesn't. So that's the disparity there. And you're right. It could be interest, right? It could be that there isn't enough interest. But to say that there is no interest, it can't be true.
Oh, that'd be foolish. That'd be foolish.
As someone who's moving up to those systems, right? If you're in a writer's room, right, and it is everybody looks different from you, and once that room closes and people go off, they're going to choose people that they had the best connection with. Oh, well, we grew up in the same neighborhood. We did this thing.
Yeah.
So those common bonds lead to relationship, which then lead to other opportunities. But if you start and you're on a different pace than everybody else, what kind of sacrifice do you have to make to become a part of that room, right? And then you get into the conversation of Black people changing, right? You talk about your friend, the way he spoke. It was articulate. He was naturally articulate and well-spoken. And he had interests that were important to him.
He spoke way better than me and still speaks way better than me to this day. And I never thought of it as a race thing. I was like, that's one smart ass dude.
Right. But how much this is a thing that I think about all the time, or thought about a lot when I was younger. Now I'm really comfortable with myself. If we don't speak the same language, if we're not on the same team, we're not on the same team. Like, I'm not going to take it personally, and I'm not going to sacrifice my morals, my sense of self to fit in with that. And that's Black, white, American, European, doesn't matter. I'm comfortable with what I am myself. But when you're 14 years old, the pressure of your hormones and your identity, I do think that it is hard when you're in an environment in which people are different from you, trying to connect at a young age. And that can be difficult and challenging. But being a teenager is hard for everybody, right? Oh. Throw on being Black, throw on being any sort of minority. It can be a challenging situation. And not that those people are victims, right? Because I think you could be a victim no matter what you are, but acknowledging the challenge, right? Your friend, he spoke a certain way, got teased for it. The challenge of moving out of where you are. You said you left the South to go pursue something else. Did you feel like you couldn't? Did you feel like any unnecessary adversity? Was your family supportive of you starting a different life?
That's great questions. My mom and dad, my mom she passed away, but she was an entertainer, just head in the clouds, not the best business person, not the whatnot, huge heart, whatnot, but just total entertainer. My dad, total businessman. I grew up, we didn't have much money, whatnot. My dad had lost his money before I was born. He was millionaire, multimillionaire, and then lost it all. And then left his first wife, this and that, and then started a family with my mom and us, whatnot. We grew up for the most part, not with a ton, he was very stubborn. He always, business, he always taught me, you don't deserve shit. You don't deserve anything. You're only going to get what you go out and try to get. And you might not even get that because the world's not fair. Like, there's no fairness out there. Like, you may try 10 times harder than everybody else. You may be smarter, better looking, harder, whatever it may be, whatever thing. And you may have to work 10 times harder than everybody else. And then other people just walk in the right room at the right time and bang, it's given to them, but that doesn't matter. You take care of you and you handle you. That's what I was taught. My mom said, you can be anything you want to, you can this and that, and I think because of how they raised me, I have what I call a false sense of confidence. Like, I don't know why I can do it, but I could do it. If give me the time, I'll do it. I wouldn't say I'm the best at it. I wouldn't say I'm the whatever. I wouldn't say I'm better than you. I'm not trying to be better than you. I'm just trying to be awesome. And my biggest competition's me. So, but I had friends who were like, oh, you ain't going to be shit. Their parents would literally say it. And I'm in the room. Like, you ain't going to be shit because I'm not shit. And it's like, oh, that isn't necessarily causation, correlation and causation. Like, that's not.
But trauma though, right?
But trauma. For sure.
How do you escape that? If that's the narrative that gets passed down over and over and over again, what does it take to overcome that? Again, it's not about the victim, but like, there's that trauma that you have to. I'm similar. Like, my mom and my grandparents raised me, and I was instilled with this: you can do anything. Like you can work at it, but I was never discouraged from reaching for anything. They always, whatever it was, when it was art, when it was uh, uh, martial arts, when it was college, whatever it was, we'll support. We got your back. And when I failed, when I did not succeed at what I did, they were there to support me as well. So I'm blessed definitely with a very supportive family, and I look to build that personally with
money
my
wise
relationships too.
Did you have that kind of, was there money around? Was there this, were you guys,
As a kid, like I didn't really have much understanding. I didn't know if we were rich or poor. Like, right. I never wanted or felt like I lacked anything growing up. You know,
I didn't know we were like, no, I didn't have money till we were like, I want to say like 12 or something like that. Like I didn't know till then.
even then though, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Like, right, in high school, kids dressed nicer than I did, but like I had clothes, I had shoes, like nothing had holes in it. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't worn down. But like we were definitely lower middle class, if not lower upper class. Like we weren't rich, right, or even well off middle class. You know, I had a big family. My mom, my grandparents, an uncle. Like I grew up in like traditionally what you would think of like in Asian cultures, right? Our entire family lived in that house.
2-3 generations and whatnot in there.
Exactly.
Hispanic culture, that's big on. I know tons of, like, for example, Mexicans are right next to Mexico. Mexican folks who have that, and they actually have great lives because everybody's chipping in, everybody's paying, everybody's whatnot, and they all have the money to build businesses and the money to keep going and grow and skip hurdles.
That's it though, right? Other cultures have this in India, in Japan, in Mexico. Like other cultures have that. And if we're diagnosing what is wrong with American culture, which part of like I'm picking up on is that we don't have that same sense of family duty pervasively, right? I do know, not to say that people don't take care of their parents. When my mom moved back and took care of her grandparents, we met an older woman a few weeks ago, and she moved back in to take. So it does happen, but here, that kind of responsibility, I'm not taking care of my parents. Put them in a home, right? Put them in a home and somebody else take care of them. And that's not necessarily how other cultures look at it. And I think that you have something of value because with your parents, you have a built-in babysitter, right? If you were living with your parents and like,
I wish I had that. Oh man.
Yeah. I'm sure, especially with COVID too, like you can't have people over, like, so I'm sure it must be hard, but you see the benefit of having, if you had a parent around, you can live your life.
Oh yeah, they're more retired or Social Security. They have money coming in, and so they can like take my kid through the 2 days a week, so I can go like hustle and build and make it better. You know, and I can only imagine like people who have 2 and 3 kids are in the same position and like in a worse position even. And I'm like, dang, how do you do it? You know,
I mean, I think that any parent, you earn parent muscles. Because like one of my best friends just had a baby, and like just the process of transforming your life to fit this new creature that you have to protect and take care of, it changes your perspective in a lot of ways. Again, I don't have kids. I am the oldest of 10, so I watched my mom raise her kids.
So that's understanding though. I mean, that's still you were aware of seeing certain aspects. It is different. And I was the same way. It is different when you have your own. I have a little boy. He's a year and some change for anybody who doesn't know. And it's there's changes to be made, like or dislike, but it's definitely, I don't know, it's harder to do than it is than everybody probably just looks from the outside and goes, oh, that looks easy. Like, no, it's a struggle. It is.
Yeah. Again, you change your life completely for this thing. And so now thinking about your son, right? You now have a responsibility in raising him, right? In setting down these morals, these goals, these ways of living. How are you thinking about, did you have this, they say men don't become dads until they hold their baby, whereas women become moms, from the time they start getting pregnant.
I can see that, yeah.
Did you feel like, were you like, oh man, I'm definitely going to pass this down to my son. I want to make sure.
Tons of things. I mean, a lot of like, my dad wasn't like a super fathery dad. He wasn't, it was more like he was a businessman. He was, the way I described it, I love my dad. And he was more like a stepdad that I was biologically identical to. Like it was, It was, my mom did all the raising. He went out and worked. He would come home, give me a few nuggets here and there every few months. It'd be like a lifestyle nugget of like something to learn. And like, here's a thing, which I'll probably do with my son. There'll be good things that he'll learn from me and bad things he'll learn from me and things he'll learn not to do because of maybe a bad habit I have. The older we get, we learn that our parents are flawed. And, there's a ton of good things that I want to, put into him. I want him to be curious. I want him to not just take no's as an answer. I want him to investigate those no's respectively. But I want him to, just have like this curiosity and hunger to be able to talk to anybody like I do and just want to be a part of everything and want to, I don't know. I don't want to be stuck on, I'm worried about kids and him being stuck online and everything and just getting involved in the easy hate that's online, the trolls, all that. And then you get this divisive bullshit like we're having, and then troubles in the election, and then, identity politics. And then, it's all, I just don't want him to be stuck in front of a computer screen and, whatnot, which is, I think the future is going to be everything's robotics and computer. And it's like, no, let's go out and play football, baseball, So yeah. I worry about, I know it's a little off your question, but it was, I want to get all of these things into him, as much as I can, so that he can decide where he wants to take his life, and find what his success is and his happiness, Yeah.
No, I think it's in alignment just because, as we're talking about and thinking about what choices we're making and how we really, we started talking about politics or the election, but it's really how we think about socialization, right? What does our society look like? How do we participate in it? And, as you talk about, as you were raising your son, I want a family, right? I'm an oldest of 10, so I want a big family. But you think about, what are you instilling? What are you leaving behind? So that they can have, every parent, correct me if I'm wrong, wants the best for their kid, right? You want them to have a life better than what you have.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so you do the best that you can to set them up with the tools to be good citizens, right? To, not be lazy, to work hard, to not take, I love that. Investigate the no's, right? I love that as a kind of mantra to instill in somebody, because, you don't have to be stopped. It's not a failure. I always believe that failure starts when you give up.
Yeah.
Right? As long as you keep pushing, and I like that, even respectfully investigating, but don't let something trip you up. The thing about being online, I mean, good luck, right? We're gonna have to take them on camping trips and go hike, just get them outside to enjoy that. Cause I mean, we're now sitting on our computers having this call, right? And it's easy, you can. I don't know how you discourage that or encourage that, or make it so that they're balanced. Because we grew up in a time, we're of a similar age, right?
Yeah.
The internet wasn't the monster that it is now. We had to, my parents used to make me go outside and play.
Yeah, they didn't have to make me go outside and play, but I remember texting wasn't really like, you just texted like a couple words. Now you're having full arguments. People are getting divorced. Business deals are getting dropped. People are getting fired over text, like from their job. Bosses are fired. It's a totally different world. Like people, like I remember one time I had to fire a editor one time because I called him and he was like, "Why are you wasting my time calling me?" And I was like, "What'd you just say to me? You don't talk to the producer like that. Bye." Like that was, first off, disrespectful. Two, it was a phone call that you knew was coming and he wanted to do an email or a text. He was just trying to flex, basically. And I was like, "No, you're an adult. We're gonna have a phone call." But people are like that now. They don't want to have confrontation or whatnot, which I think is part of, circle back to before we end this. I know you got some places to be and whatnot, but the election, everything is like, let's confront you with the things that you have to be on the defense. And then you'll hopefully just back off and give me what I want. And that's where the shame, the guilt, the whatnot, I think is happening right now on both sides of politics. And that's not how we have a conversation. That's not how we get to the light. That's not how we have good things happen. We got to come together, work together, and grow and listen and have conversations.
Yeah. So look, I thank you for inviting me to come and have this conversation, because I think, and I wish you all the best in continuing to have these conversations on different topics, because I think that there's a world of benefit to having people speak openly about something, right? Dave Chappelle had that joke years ago, where he's talking to his neighbor and he says, oh, so-and-so, who'd you vote for? And he's like, hey, Dave, we don't talk about politics. So last night I was fucking my wife. Like, right? It's like this disconnect we have about what is okay to personally care and what not. And like, people say, don't talk about politics or religion. Those are hot button issues. And I'm like, well, if you can't talk about what you believe and what you think with another person, then maybe you shouldn't be friends with that person.
Yeah.
Because I want to be open to have whatever conversation with anybody. And if I disagree with you, I'll let you know. And if it gets to the point where, like, let's say you were so, this whole conversation, you're interrupting me, you're calling me names, you're doing that stuff. There is a place where I'm like, you know what, Michael, we can't, like, this doesn't work. Right? I'm not saying that you got to kumbaya, invite everybody into your circle. You can be discerning, but don't be dismissive to the point where you cut out your allies, you cut out your support system, right? There's always that kind of backlash or that counter defensiveness that all white people are bad or all a certain type of people are bad.
Which is pretty popular right now, and which pisses off a lot of people I know. Like,
it's been popular. I think everything happens in waves. Right?
True. Very true. Very true.
And we're at a really tense wave right now, which is going back to politics. This is why I think Trump is having a problem now, because we know he's not somebody that brings people together. And I think we're in a place now where we're kind of hungry to have better connection, and Trump is not that guy. So if we want that, and again, whatever problems you have with Biden, we know Biden is at least rhetorically interested in communication and crossing the aisle, whereas we know Trump is not. So I think that's going to hurt him in the places that he needs to win.
I don't trust either one of them. I don't believe either one of them's got really like the best for the public. But that's just me. I have a very cynical of like career politicians and whatnot, but that's a whole nother thing. And, dude,
if
this
we
has
can get
been
the idea.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I want to hear that. Yeah, an idea. Go.
If we can get into the idea of away from politician, right? You talk about branding, but into public servant. Like, right? That's really what a politician is supposed to be. They're supposed to be a public servant, right?
It's like we work for them, though. It's like we work for them is how it's kind of turned into.
The same way that actors work for their agents, where it's really the paradigm gets shifted in a way that is not the way it's supposed to be. Your agent works for you. Your representative, your senator, they work for us. And so if we can get that in our minds, which makes us need to be more active. My parting thing I want to give to you and everybody is this dope essay I read called Eclipse of the Public. John Dewey. Dude wrote it in, let's say, the 20s. And he talked about how the public would get so distracted by the radio and sports on the radio that we would lose track of politics, and that it would get kind of conscripted into something that's more nefarious. And like, he wrote that in the 20s. I'm sure if he were to look at what's happening now, he'd be like, oh, I was right. But I highly recommend that essay, Eclipse of the Public.
Okay.
It's just an enlightening read to look at really how much has changed and how much actually stayed the same.
I might have to check that out.
Yeah.
I have to ask you. I'm probably have to text you and get you to remind me about that. But I want to know. So the main thing I want to ask. Well, first off, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming again. Thank you for having this conversation. We had some agreeing, some disagreeing, some what ifs, some strong questions, some from all of it. The main takeaway: are we still friends?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, goal. I think we've accomplished another good episode of the Questions Podcast Show. That my man, Daren, the legend, Daren Taylor. Once again, you need a director, you need a writer. This is a man. This is a quality guy right here, guys. So I'm Michael Newmeyer. This is the Questions Podcast Show. Till next time.
Thanks, man.